exists. But that case
Makes it very difficult to find your way into federal court. That case makes it almost impossible to find your way into state court in California, even though there is federal and state authority to allow you there. But what you have to do is figure out some way, if possible, and California is not a good example of this, where you can establish jurisdiction in some court of law and establish some waiver of the government's, meaning the tribal government's or its officials' immunity. And that is a very, very difficult proposition, one of the most difficult propositions in Indian country today. Playing in the equities. What I've realized in disenrollment defense litigation is if you can establish jurisdiction and some notion of immunity waiver, and we typically have only been able to do it in tribal courts in the Northwest, which again aren't afflicted by PL 280 to the extent to which California Indians are. The tribal court or the Court of Appeals will never ask an answer, thanks to Martinez, the question of who is a tribal member or who's an Indian. They will not go there. It has been beat into our head since 1978, thanks to Thurgood Marshall and some footnotes in that opinion, that it's not the province of courts to decide that issue, rightly or wrongly. But what they will do is recognize, as Indians, or as jurists, the injustice of disenrollment. And they will hold the tribal government or officials to a very high standard of due process. Equitably speaking, which is why I say play to the equities. In Grand Ronde, we got everybody enrolled because the court says under notions of latches, an equitable notion that says, through the passage of time, the status quo at some point must prevail. You enrolled these folks 30 years ago, after you were terminated in the 50s, and after you were restored in the 80s. But for these people, you would not have had the critical mass of Indians to be the Grand Ronde tribes today. But for the treaty and the treaty chief, you would have had a pretty tough go of it. 30 years later, you have not only enrolled the first generation of that family in modern times, but the second generation, and so on and so forth. You cannot undo the decision 30 years later. Also, as a matter of equitable estoppel, you have held yourself out by way of these relatives to put yourself in the Columbia River Gorge, where this treaty chief lived and was hung. You've established by way of them your fishing rights. You have absurdly used these people and that treaty chief to fend off another tribe's recognition and establishment of their reservation because you were afraid it would cut into your gaming market. You cannot have it both ways. As a matter of latches, in the passage of time and equitable estoppel, you've taken positions embracing them as belonging. You cannot say they don't belong. At Nooksack, Tribal Court of Appeals has meted out a number of procedural decisions, stays of disenrollment pending appeal, injunctions against disenrollment for lack of due process. Again, not deciding who's a Nooksack, but saying as a matter of due process, we will hold the tribe accountable. You will never win in court on the notion of who is not a Grand Ronde or a Nooksack or the same here. But you might, if you're fortunate to find jurisdiction, have judges who are willing to, ethically speaking, do something about disenrollment. To that end, you have to reframe the narrative. When I hear Donald Trump talk about bad hombres or evildoers, it's exactly what tribal politicians say about those who they do not believe belong. Do not belong. They're vigilantes. They're criminals. They're from Canada. They're not of our tribe, they're of that tribe. They're black. They're Filipino. They're Indopino. Whether it's racist or classist, it's the same rhetoric that Donald Trump espouses. And then you hear his lawyers go into the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and they say you don't have standing to challenge the authority. And the court doesn't have jurisdiction to consider all those extra litigation statements. That's exactly what this movement defense or prosecutors, I should suggest, argue. Court doesn't have jurisdiction. Can't consider the evidence beyond the record. The rhetoric is the same, but you have to overcome tribal politicians controlling the narrative through all of the devices of the tribe. Either they won't have a general council meeting, or they will with their own agenda. Either they'll shut down the newsletter, or they'll pack the agenda like the Paula chairman typically does, with rhetoric and lies. Or they'll shut down the Facebook page, or they'll pack the Facebook page with all of their so-called truth. Here's another thing. Disenrollment is not about truth. There is no truth to disenrollment. It is about some other ulterior motive. Sustaining power, sustaining wealth, concentrating those things in political allies. But to reframe the narrative, you have to play in the court of public opinion. And our folks have very consciously and deliberately done so in social media, by way of the mass media, and otherwise. And we've seen the benefit of changed minds and hearts in places like social media that ultimately creates more pressure on the tribal politicians and causes them to do things even more arbitrarily and capriciously, which ultimately judges hold them more and more accountable for. So there is great power in the court of public opinion. In particular, the fourth estate, the mass media. We have gotten massive traction through outreach to the media, embrace of the media, and through stories being told by and through the media. Major media outlets like the New York Times, Seattle Times, local media outlets like the Bellingham Herald or the Oregonian, tribal media outlets of other tribes, and even social media outlets. Most importantly, what I tell my folks is you will win this war at the end of the day at doorsteps and dinner tables. Getting back to kinship. Where do you share kinship? Where do you share stories? Where do you interrelate the best? In your homes, at the grocery store, at the gas station. But on the doorsteps of your relatives and the dinner table of your relatives is where the most important advocacy and storytelling can be done. But it has to stay positive. I don't know of a more painful subject in any country than this one. When you are subject to having your identity stolen by people for evil motive, I'm close to the pain and anguish, but I haven't been there, so I can only empathize with the pain and anguish. I know it runs very deep. I've seen people fall down on the ground over rocks by what has happened to them. I've seen lots of tears. I've seen lots of anger. I've seen lots of very visceral, ill emotion that cannot overcome you or your family if you're subject to disenrollment. Because the old saying goes, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And that pain and anguish is seen as vinegar, not honey. You have to remain positive. There's a very prominent blog on disenrollment that unfortunately espouses negativity and hatred. And uses the same words and rhetoric and messages that disenrolling politicians or xenophobes or misogynists or sexists or racists like 45 uses. That is not going to move the needle in curing this epidemic of disenrollment. You cannot become what your oppressor is or has. You have to stay positive. And the penultimate strategy, which again is why this conversation is so important, is you, either the disenrollee or the lawyer or the academic or the community member or the sympathizer. You don't have to be native or indigenous to sympathize or help make change here, by the way. We have to break the silence that has taken hold of Indian country in the face of all of this. And there's a lot of, I don't know if blame is the right word, perhaps burden. I've already pointed to the academic institution. Tribal leaders need to bear more responsibility for the conversation. They don't because they're afraid to be seen as criticizing another tribe. But unless we, the Indian legal community, the academic community, the leader community, the tribal community have these conversations, there will be no change. But the silence and the taboo associated with these issues is what has allowed this cancer in my mind, that is disenrollment in particular, or related disenfranchisement, to have taken hold over the last couple of decades, especially in Southern California, where it's an epicenter. Quoting Chairman Joseph Hamilton from the Ramona Band of Cahuilla Indians, disenrollment is not an innate right of tribal peoples. It was foisted upon tribes by the federal government in order to extinguish us. But it is a right nonetheless. I suppose the tribe has a right to extinguish itself, like some did in the 1950s, if it chooses to. The point is not that we can't hold contradictory views about the issue, but instead that we better start talking about disenrollment and finding solutions before it's too late. Brave words from a chairman, especially in these parts. Unfortunately, nobody in tribal leader circles is willing to talk about it. Not at NCAI, National Congress of American Indians, not at NIGA, National Indian Gaming Association, not among Southern California tribal leaders. Not anywhere. I fear that if we don't talk, if we don't simply talk to one another, think about that, which we aren't, and more importantly, take some form of action, we run the real risk that Congress will exercise its quote-unquote plenary power over tribes and decide who's an Indian, an idea almost too scary to consider. And if we don't have these conversations, and we don't band together to say enough is enough, even to another tribe, this very powerful chapter, or passage, could very well come true. Talked about 200 years of essentially genocidal policy against Indian peoples that is informing our identities today. The last chapter in any successful genocide is the one in which the oppressor can remove their hands and say, my God, what are these people doing to themselves? They're killing each other. They're killing themselves while we watch them die. This is how we came to own these United States. This is the legacy of Manifest Destiny. And it is that legacy, that horrific genocidal legacy, that I've talked about again, from treaties, the Dawes Act, the Lacey Act, to the Burke Act, the Indian Organization Act, the Indian Regulatory Act, that informs who we are today, unfortunately. And it is our job to rebuff that legacy and ensure that we don't exterminate ourselves in the process that we're currently witnessing. So I'm not going to have very long to stay because I'm going to have to catch a plane, and I've given you my cell phone number here. I want to thank you for your time and attention today. But what I want to leave you with is please take this home to your dinner table, to your tribal community, to other law schools, to your classroom, and have these conversations. Because it's only through the conversation that was inculcated here today, again, hands raised to the people that were brave enough to make this happen, that we will find the cure to the epidemic that is disenrollment